When It Hurts, Powerful Motivational Story. It's 3 a.m., the kind of hour when the world feels still, and yet your mind races. You've hit rock bottom, and the weight of failure is suffocating. Every step you take seems heavier than the last, and the hardest part isn't the struggle, but the silence that surrounds it. No one sees you. No one understands. But what if I told you that there's something powerful hidden in the pain you feel? A truth so unexpected that it changes everything you've ever known about strength. In a small, forgotten village far away from where you are now, a man once stood at the edge of everything he had worked for. His dreams lay shattered, his body broken, and the world had turned its back on him. But it was in that moment, when everything seemed lost, that he discovered something no one had ever dared to share with him. Something about pain. Something about the kind of hurt that feels like it's pulling you under, only to push you into something greater. Now, imagine for a second, you're not drowning in your circumstances, you're being reborn. Can you guess what happens next? Stay with me, because what you're about to learn could change everything. The man's name was Kai, and in that moment, he felt as if the weight of the world had crushed him entirely. His heart beat slowly in his chest, each thud a reminder of everything he had lost. The business he spent years building, the love he thought would last forever, the dreams he had once held high above the ground, each piece was now scattered, broken, and lost in the void. But Kai wasn't always like this. Years ago, he had been a dreamer, an idealist who believed that hard work and a pure heart could get him anything he wanted. He didn't need much, just a chance. Just a small moment where he could prove himself. But that moment never seemed to come. Instead, he found himself spinning in a cycle of disappointment, always working harder, always pushing further, and yet nothing ever seemed to fall into place. People told him to be patient, that things would get better in time. But the truth was, Kai had stopped believing that. The weight of his failures was too much, and it felt like no one cared. He had given everything he had to the world, and the world had only returned pain. His once bright eyes now stared out over the horizon, the dim light of the moon casting long shadows across the earth. The village he called home seemed miles away. He could feel the cold biting at his skin, but it wasn't the cold that made him shiver. It was the realization that he was utterly alone in this world. But even in the deepest of pain, something strange began to stir inside him. He had hit rock bottom, yes, but deep down, something was awakening. In the quiet of the night, a memory from his childhood surfaced. It was of an old man, the village sage. The man had lived through countless wars, lost friends, seen everything good turn bad, and everything bad turn good. His advice was simple, but profound. Kai, he had said years ago, the greatest lesson you will ever learn is not to avoid pain, but to embrace it. In pain, you will find your true self. At the time, Kai had scoffed at those words, seeing them as nothing more than the ramblings of an old man. But now, in the depths of his own suffering, they echoed through his mind with the power of a truth he could no longer ignore. The old man's voice seemed to reach him from the past, like a beacon in the darkness. Embrace the pain. Was it possible? Could the very thing that had torn him apart also be the key to his transformation? As he stood there, lost in his thoughts, Kai noticed something, a small, flickering light in the distance. He wasn't sure what it was, but something told him to follow it. Without thinking, he started walking toward it, the soft crunch of gravel beneath his feet the only sound accompanying him. The night air felt thick, almost alive with anticipation. And as he walked, a strange sensation washed over him. It wasn't the usual despair, it was something different, something almost liberating. The light grew brighter the closer he got, and soon enough, he came to a clearing. In the center stood a large stone, ancient and worn by time, etched with symbols he didn't recognize. And beneath it, something incredible happened. A soft, golden light began to glow from within the stone. It wasn't an ordinary light. It pulsed, and with each pulse, it seemed to send a wave of warmth through his body. He had never felt anything like it before. Kai knelt beside the stone, feeling the warmth seep into his very bones. It was in that moment, his lowest point, that he realized what the old man had meant. The pain he had been running from, the pain that had once felt like a prison, was not the end. It was the beginning. The light from the stone wrapped around him, and with it came a sense of peace, clarity, and purpose. This was the turning point. But even as the light surrounded him, there was something else stirring, something he had to confront, a choice. The pain, the failure, the brokenness, it was all still there. It hadn't disappeared. And yet, Kai felt an unexplainable strength rising inside him. A strength born from the acceptance of his suffering, not the rejection of it. He closed his eyes and let it wash over him. The pain wasn't the enemy. It was the teacher, the mentor, the catalyst for his transformation. And as he stood up, the golden light dissipated, leaving him with a new sense of purpose. He was no longer defined by his failures. He was now defined by his resilience, his ability to rise again, to face the world not as a broken man, but as one who had been forged through the fire. Kai's journey didn't end there. In fact, it was just beginning. He returned to the village, but this time, something had changed within him. The man who had once been consumed by his pain was now a force to be reckoned with. He had learned the secret. Pain was not his enemy. It was his ally. It had led him to this new understanding, this new strength, this new beginning. What if the very thing you've been running from is the thing that will set you free? As Kai's story spreads, people begin to understand that true strength isn't found in avoiding pain. It's found in embracing it, learning from it, and using it as the fuel for a life of purpose and power. But the question remains, are you ready to embrace your pain and transform it into something greater? Let me know what you think. What does Kai's journey teach you about your own struggles? Leave a comment below with one word that symbolizes your journey, something you've learned in the face of pain. And if you found this story powerful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the only thing standing between us and our breakthrough is the willingness to embrace the hurt. And for those of you ready for the next chapter in this journey, stay tuned. The real power is just beginning.